So how much does it really cost to live in Warsaw? The answer will surprise you. My name is Wes. I've been living in Warsaw for almost a year, Poland for over 2 years. I speak Polish. I'm one of the biggest foreign YouTubers here in Poland as well. So we're gonna go through how much I'm personally paying, and I'm also gonna give you a budget option and a luxury option. So let's get into it. So the most expensive thing you're gonna be paying here is rent. And interesting enough, rent prices have been going down, at least the zloty number. But for us Americans, because of the exchange rate, it's still kind of the same. I live in a 2-bedroom, 48 square meter apartment in a co-living building. So that includes all utilities, water, electricity, internet. I get access to all the common areas and I just pay one price and everything's taken care of. This is one of the best options in my opinion for foreigners because they have very flexible leasing options. You don't have to get tied down for a year. And if you try to rent from owners directly here in Poland, it's very difficult because most people want to just rent to other Polish people, not exactly to foreigners. So you have to work with a real estate agent or certain buildings that allow you to have shorter contracts. Keep in mind, these are all for furnished apartments. If you get an unfurnished apartment, it's definitely a lot cheaper, but you have to take care of buying all of your own furniture. And to me, that's just too much of a hassle, especially for a place that's not officially mine. Right now, I pay 5,300 zloty. When I was living in the center for my 2-bedroom apartment there, the price for that was 7,000 zloty a month, but I got an influencer discount, so I was able to bring it down to 5,500 zloty a month, which is still pretty expensive in my opinion. I have friends who are living in the center in like a studio apartment. They're paying around 3,000 to 3,500 zloty a month. And I think that's a little bit more on the budget side. But then I have some friends who are living in Mokotów, or I had a friend who had an apartment right in the center. It was a big 3-bedroom apartment, and he was paying almost 4,000 US. Like, I think it was like 16,000 zloty for that. A lot of realtors, specifically the Ukrainian realtors, overcharge for a lot of these apartments. So you have to be careful with that. That's why I highly recommend working with a professional, but this is also something we talk about in a strategy call. We can go over your current situation, if it makes sense for you to even move to Warsaw or maybe try one of the other cities. Rent may seem high, but this is going to be the biggest expense that you have here living in Poland. Everybody says it, you know, in Warsaw, I think in comparison to the income to rent, it's around 40%, almost 50%, which is really, really high. But thankfully, all the other stuff are not as expensive. So let's get into that. So number 2 is food. I personally cook a lot of my foods just because I prefer eating an Asian diet. And when I cook all my own food, a lot of my inflammation goes down, especially with the skin. But I have a lot of friends that are eating out most of the time. So an average trip to the grocery store for me can range anywhere from around 60 zloty to 130 zloty. And I go a couple of times a week. So we can average that out to around 100 zloty per trip or 200 zloty a week, which comes out to around 800 zloty per week. Let's just meet in the middle and say 1,000 zloty for groceries. It used to be around 250 US. Now I think it's a little bit closer to $300 US. I also like to order a lot of food through delivery. There are a few delivery apps here. You have Wolt, you have Glovo, you have Uber Eats, you also have Bolt Food. I personally have been using Glovo because Glovo Plus, which is a membership that you pay, is like 13 zloty a month and you get unlimited deliveries over a certain amount, like over 70 zloty, which is $20. And I use this to order my groceries all the time because you can order groceries from Biedronka, from Auchan, from Carrefour, and Kaufland. That's something I do to save a lot of time. Instead of doing the grocery shopping myself, I just order it through delivery and they deliver it right to your house. It's amazing. Delivery for food, for me, I order maybe a couple of times and each time it's around 50 zloty. So I'd say it can cost anywhere from 100 to maybe 150 zloty a week, which comes out to around 600 zloty a week. And this is just for food that I'm eating at home, not including restaurants. Restaurants now are an average of around 32 zloty for some of the nicer lunch menu stuff, to upwards of maybe 50, 55 zloty, depending on what you're eating, where you're eating. The closer you are to the center, of course, it's gonna be a little bit more expensive. I only eat out a few times in the month. Usually I'm going with my friends. We have like a friend's dinner and we'll go to a really nice restaurant. So that could cost up to maybe like 250 zloty or like 70 bucks. But sometimes my friends and I will go to like a smaller place and it costs like 30 bucks per person. And I only do that a few times a month. So I would put that at around maybe 600 to 800 zloty a month. And this is all for food. So if you were to total everything up, you have 1,000 on groceries, you have 600 on delivery, and I have about 700 eating out in restaurants. So that comes out to around 2,300 zloty just for food, which is actually quite a bit. I think that's like 600 something dollars. So just from rent and food, we are at 7,600 zloty, which is a little bit over $2,000. One of the low-key expenses that a lot of people take into account is the cost of water. Unfortunately, because it's Europe, you have to pay for water everywhere here. A lot of restaurants do offer tap water, but I don't know, there's something about the Warsaw tap water that I personally don't like that much. For some reason, if I drink a lot of it, sometimes it makes me want to puke. That's why I mainly buy bottled water. In my opinion, this one, Alkalia, is by far the best water brand here, but it's also quite expensive. These 1.5 liter bottles cost 4 to 4.5 zloty. And they recently implemented a 50 groszy charge for every bottle that you use. So if you buy like a pack of 6, you're paying the price for the bottles and you pay an additional 3 zloty because of the plastic fee or whatever. Right? And this actually adds up because depending on how much water you drink, you can spend upwards of like 10 to 13 zloty per day, which comes out to 300 to 400 zloty per month, which is almost like an extra $100, right? I'm still trying to figure out solutions to get water in like high quantity and see if they can deliver it to your house. When I finally figure that out, I'll update you guys in a future video. But for now, I mainly just go to the grocery store and I buy bottles in big packs. You can also go to Żabka. They have a lot of water bottles there. They have this Zdrov one that is very common, a lot of people drink. In my opinion, it's a little too acidic. It reminds me of Arrowhead water from the US. It's pretty good, but also if I drink that, I feel like after a while, my body starts to kind of reject the water. If the water is okay for you though, you can just buy like a Brita filter and drink from the tap. So let's talk about transportation. This is where you can save a lot of money in Warsaw. A lot of my friends, especially if they have money, they just take Ubers everywhere, which honestly are not that expensive. A one-way trip can cost you anywhere from 16 zloty to 32 zloty. So it can be like $5 to $9. But if you take public transportation, for a 20-minute ticket, it's 3 zloty 40 groszy. For a 75-minute ticket, it's 4 zloty and 40 groszy. When I do most of my errands, I try to do it on the same 75-minute ticket, so I only have to pay one price. And if you do the math, right, if I were to take an Uber there and back, it would cost maybe 24 zloty to get there, 24 back. That's 48 zloty. Whereas if I just took the public transportation, that's 4 zloty and 40 groszy, right? So it's 10 times less. If you're just visiting or you're here on vacation, just take an Uber to get everywhere. But this is one of the things where people spend a lot more money than they think. You can also rent a bike here. During the summer, they have the bike rental systems that you can use, which are very, very affordable. Just make sure to put the bike back in the dedicated bike racks or you'll get charged a fee like I was, and the fees are actually really expensive. You can also buy your own scooter. They also have Bolt scooters all around the city. You can buy monthly passes, week passes, a day pass. So there are a lot of options for transportation all over the city. And I love that in the city, you do not need a car to survive. Is it nice to have a car? Sure. But parking can be annoying sometimes. And if you're going out in the city is so walkable and it's so difficult to find parking. Usually it's better to Uber or to take public transportation. So on a budget option, if you walk and take public transport everywhere, you're probably gonna be spending around 50 to 100 zloty a month. Whereas if you take Ubers everywhere, you can be spending 800 to 1,200 a month. So it's a very big difference. All right, so let's talk about some extra lifestyle expenses. I personally go to Zdrov, which is the biggest chain gym here in Warsaw. That cost me 170 zloty a month, which now comes out to around $50 a month. There are a bunch of other options as well, such as CityFit, which is 24 hours. They also have like some smaller gym clubs. They have run clubs here. They're not as convenient as the bigger chain gyms, but they also have different benefits, such as like a social network and a community. I get a haircut once or twice a month, and the haircut can range from 40 zloty on the cheaper side to 120 zloty on the more expensive side. Now I go to a barber, he charges 80 zloty per haircut. And let's say I do that twice a month, so that would be 160 zloty. I also take Polish lessons 1 to 2 times a week from my teacher, Marta. She's absolutely fantastic. I've progressed so much with her, and the Polish lessons cost 70 zloty per lesson. So that twice a week in a month is 560 zloty. If you get residency here, you need to have insurance. The cheapest insurance that they have is around 500 zloty, but this doesn't cover much for you. You still have to pay for your doctor's visits. It's just the cheapest option that you can buy to get residency. But they also have LuxiMed, which is on the more expensive side, but it covers a lot more. Doctor's visits, tests, all those things. And that costs 700 zloty a month or $200 a month. I also personally like to get a massage once or twice a month, and that costs around 250 zloty. Makes a really big difference in your body and how you feel. If you need to go to the doctor, that usually costs from around 200 to 300 zloty. per visit. So when it comes to subscriptions, so I subscribe to Netflix here, so it's 49 zloty a month. I pay for Uber One, which I think is like 20 zloty a month. I pay for Global Prime, which is 13 zloty a month. These are so ridiculously valuable. I highly recommend getting these memberships. I also pay for PlayStation Plus here in Poland, and that's because I have been playing a lot of video games in Polish. But the problem is you have to have the account based in Poland in order for you to download the Polish audio. So that's why I had to do it this way. And that costs 47 zloty a month. So for the subscriptions, these altogether come out to around 109 zloty. And how much you spend on social activities depends on your lifestyle. For a date for two people, you can spend as little as like 150 zloty. Sometimes you can spend upwards of 250, sometimes even 300. So depending on how many times you go in a month. And if you go out to the club and parties and stuff, drinks and cocktails cost like 40 to 60 zloty now at some of the high-end stuff, but you can still go to some of the cheaper bars and get a beer for like 12 zloty. So this can vary based on your lifestyle. And I put this could be anywhere from 200 to 400 zloty per month. Okay, so if we were to add everything up, we have 5,300 zloty for rent. We have 2,300 zloty for food. We have 350 zloty for water. We have around 150 to 200 zloty for transport. We have 170 zloty for the gym. We have Polish lessons for 560 zloty. We have subscriptions that total to 110 zloty. We have dates, social, and any other miscellaneous stuff ranging from 800 to 1,200 zloty. So that comes out to 9,800 zloty to 10,500 zloty per month. I wouldn't say I live like a hyper luxury lifestyle, but I don't think I'm budget either. I think I'm like somewhere in the middle, maybe leaning towards the luxury side. Warsaw can be super cheap if you want to, if you're trying to live on a budget. But honestly, if you are living on a budget, I highly recommend other options such as living in other cities. If you go to Łódź, which is an hour outside of Warsaw, your cost of living goes down drastically, maybe even half. If you live in Kraków, I think your cost of living will go down around 25 to 30%. If you go to Wrocław, it goes even lower. Warsaw is by far the most expensive city here in Poland. If you guys are thinking about moving to Warsaw, I highly recommend setting up a consultation call here. We can go over your current situation, if it makes sense for you to even move to Warsaw or maybe try one of the other cities, cost of living, how to set up your social life, how to get residency here legally, things to do, which neighborhoods that you should live in, what kind of apartment can you get, how do you get an apartment. If you guys are interested, I highly recommend you setting it up here. See you all in the next one. Bye.